G'day guys, it's Ross here, and today we've got this Cricut Maker. You can see there, and the problem with this Cricut Maker, that those rollers are absolutely cactus. They've expanded out and they don't work anymore, so we're going to have to replace them. Okay, so step one, we're going to open the lid up here, and as you open it up, it looks like it's one piece, but there's actually a cover right here. It's only a couple of millimeters thick, and we need to just get it up at one end. There we go. And we're just going to gently work our way along. There we are. I think there are 5 pop downs. There we are. And what I mean by that is there's 5 of these that go down into these holes here. Okay, so we're going to put that piece aside, and that allows us access to these 4 screws. A little bit of encouragement, we're going to take that top panel off, and again we'll set it over to one side. Now the next step is to turn this upside down gently. There we go. Now there are 7 screws on the bottom. We're not going to touch any of them. What we are going to do is we're going to remove the 4 rubber feet, and underneath there will be 4 black Phillips screws. These are a bit longer. I use the electric just for convenience, but a normal Phillips head will be just fine. All right, step 3, we've taken those screws out. We'll roll the thing back over. There we are, that's how it normally sits. And what we have to do now is there are 7 screws that sit up underneath here. So I'll turn this around and we'll look at it from the back and roll it over and see if I can get the camera in there and we can take a closer look. And then we look down in here. There we go, there's a screw right there. There's one further along there. Okay, we're looking at this upside down. So there's a number of these, and there are 7 in total. There you go, some on the top, some on the bottom. Is I'm going to try one of these. And I'm going to feel for these screws. So I can see one of them right there. Once you actually loosen them off, they're pretty easy to get out. The difficulty is just loosening them off. This would be a little bit easier if I had 2 hands, but I'm just holding this camera so you can see what I'm doing. And this is the fiddliest part of the whole job. And you can see here that once it's loose, I can just get in here with a little screw head, which I've put in a socket. There you go, I've just done it like that. And that comes out pretty easily. Now that we've got that done, we can clean some of these things out of the way. We'll be able to lift off the cover. So there we go, there's the cover lifting off. Now, when you do this, you've got to be a little bit careful of what's happening over here on the right-hand side. So let's take a look at that. Okay, on the right-hand side where the cover is, what we have is an electrical connector. It connects here into this little white thing just there. It also connects here, again with a little bit of tape. So take one of them out. It doesn't matter which one, whichever one is more convenient or easier. I am actually going to go for the one that is here, which is on the actual cover itself. So I'm going to take that tape out of the way, peel it back on one side, and then there we go. I'm just pressing down. You can see the connectors come out, and I can now put that cover to one side, and that connector's just hanging out like that. Okay, so there's the cover there, and that gives us the access that we need. Okay, so now we can actually start getting a bit serious. That we've opened up access to the Cricut, and what we're playing with is this end. And with our screwdriver, I'm just going to move that around, and what I want to do is pop it up. There we are. Where did that go? There it is. So that's a circlip that holds that rod end on. So we'll put that to one side. We're going to reuse that. And once we've done that, we'll take out this spring here. Actually, I might do that with a pair of pliers. Make life a little bit easier. There we are. Put that out of the way, and that just sits in a little hole right there. Now that I've done that, we can remove that completely. Okay, so that little bit of metal. And now we have access to the roller. All right, so we're up on the left-hand side now. And what we want to do is we can see there are 2 silver screws just here, and there are 2 black screws just here. And we're going to replace or remove both of those. All right, so we've taken off the 2 silver screws and the 2 black screws. Now what we need to do is we need to release this little spring here. Oh, you can also take off this little engine mount, okay? So take that engine mount off. It just sits over the little post right here and goes in and gets screwed in with those silver screws. So that's nice and simple. Here we go. And once you do that, I'll actually just take that out of the way for the moment. We can lift this up out of the way. We've got another spring there at the back, but we'll just leave that one. Okay, so you can see just in behind this big cog here, which we cannot remove. Okay, you can't pull it up out of the way, but what you can see down in here, just there, is another C-clip. And again, what we need to do is try and rotate that a little bit. Come on, come around. There we go, rotate that a little bit around. And with any luck, we can just lift it up. There we are. And that C-clip, a little bit dirty with grease on it. All right, so now that we've done that, we have access to the rod. Lovely, good. And we can slide that out. We're just going to do a little bit of wiggling. Now we'll just move the Cricut back a little bit and we'll take a look at this rod. And what we can see is, look at that, absolutely rubbish, right? Way too big. And they should sit in this little cutout here, but at the moment they're so big they can just easily slide over. They shouldn't be able to do that. On the right hand side, same issue. All right. That one is actually, yeah, it's quite stuck. Now, if you get confused, the right hand one has this little cutout here. You can see that. The left hand doesn't. So they've both got a little section for the roller, a little cutout, okay? But the right hand one has this other little cutout. So what I need to do now that these 2 rollers have come off, and look at them all dried up and scabby and about twice the size they need to be, I need to heat up some water and put on some new rollers. Now let's have a look at the difference between these rollers. In fact, we'll take some of those away. There we go. So that's the one, that's the new one, that's the old one. And you can see that that one on the right wasn't going around, wasn't picking up the paper. That one on the left, nice and tight. Now, of course, it is tight, it is rubber, it's hard. And what you now need to do is chuck this in near boiling water. There you go. It says 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 90 degrees Celsius. I've boiled the kettle, I've put the water in there, and I've waited a couple of minutes, so that's close enough. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to make that rubber softer. With any luck, I should be able to then fairly easily get it over the edge of this rod. Now, what I am suggesting you do is get yourself some gloves and a fork. Not for the heat necessarily, although some of you may not be able to handle heat well, but mainly for the grip. And the fork is just so that we can get it out of there fairly easily. There we go, it's had a minute in there. It should be warm. I'll put this over the end. Let's see how well, oh, that's not too bad. Yeah, those gloves definitely make life easier. There we go. That's not bad at all. Happy with that. Other one. Look at that, the actual roller replacement bit, nice and simple. Gloves come off. We'll get rid of the hot water. And now all we have to do, sounds simple, is to reverse the procedure and put the whole thing back together. So let's bring that Cricut a little bit closer. And the first thing we're going to do is remember which end's which. Remember, we've got a little cutout on this end, so this goes to the right. So I'm just feeding it down into that hole. It'll be pretty self-obvious evident when you come to do this. You'll probably have to move the Cricut head around. If you do that, make sure you do it slowly so you don't damage any of the gearing. There we go. Now that I've done that and that's slotted in, it's allowed me to bring it past this piece of plastic here. Pop it down on the ground and then we'll swing it back. We can see here that the rollers are sitting where they need to be. We need to move back over to the left-hand side and put this back together. Okay, so down in here, that is where we need to put this circlip back. Okay, I'm using a combination of a pair of long nose pliers, sorry about my fingers, and a screwdriver. Okay, that's on. Excellent. Just make sure that that cog is in there. There we go. That sits there. And then our engine post sits here. Oops, sits in behind there. Okay, so that sits in behind. All right, that'll hold it much better. First one's a hard one. Remembering, silver to the left and black to the right. On the left, we have to line up the bracket behind, and then a hole behind that. It's a little bit more complicated. And while I'm doing this, directly above that screw, you see this white mechanism here, just above my thumb. That is covered in a clear, I'm assuming some sort of silica grease. Try not to touch it because this stuff is very, very sticky and you do not want to be spreading that all over the inside. The other thing to be careful of is this little piece just here with the little lines on it. That's some from a measuring system. Try not to break that, or you're going to be in big trouble. All right, that's all nice and tight again. And if you remember, we have a spring. And the spring goes from this point here to this point here. So, I'll put it around the bottom. Okay, what we'll do, there we go, got it. Okay, so everything's there as it was. We've got no missing parts, which is a good thing. And now, let's turn our Cricut back around. And if you remember, we have to put this end back on. Okay, so the first thing we have is we have our little holder. And our little holder goes around the end and onto these two bits of metal. There we go. So you've got to push down on that bar a little bit to get it down there, and that's a tensioner. Okay, that's putting tension. If you can see on the side here, you've got to push it down a little bit. All right. Then we come back to our little circlip, which has to go in here. All right. Well, that was about 10 minutes of mucking around to get that circlip on, but now it's on. We're all good. We have a spring to put on. All right, so we're going to put it onto the bottom first. That little hole, and then I'm going to put it on a small flathead, and hopefully, oof, there we go, done. Look at that, we're getting somewhere. Next step, by the way, while we're here, let's take a quick look, and we can see that those 7 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one up under here, and they're the 7, I'm not sure about that one up under there, but they're the 7, oh there we go, at the end here, sorry, there we go. They're the 7 that match up with these holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all right? So we're now going to put this back, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reconnect our little controller, okay? So that little controller, just got to wiggle around so I can get it close enough. Get up under there. Just wiggle that in. Okay, pretty easy to push in. And the other thing that we'll do, now that we've got that in, is we'll take that tape back and give ourselves a little bit of slack here and put the tape back over top where it was when we first started. There we go, there's just a little bit of protection and give ourselves a little bit of, take the pressure off there. Right, that's all connected. Okay, pretty straightforward. And now we will carefully, making sure we're not crimping anything, put this back exactly where it came from. This will require just a little bit of wiggling around. All right, and now the fun job. So the fun job is I have to get back up under here and put those screws back on. And I'm going to go back to my little specialty tool that I used, which is a socket, and my little screw bit. Okay, so I'll just pop that in there, and I should be able to get underneath and just screw it up by hand. So that's how I'm going to do this, and then I can just finish tightening it with the socket. This is where you've got to know where they came from. Okay, so now that we've got that back on, all those screws underneath, which is a bit of a painful task, they make sure that the casing is all attached. What we have to do now, we're just going to drop these black screws back in. And we pop the feet back on, and we are nearly done. So we'll turn the machine back over and spin it around. Now we're going to reattach the top. We've got our last 4 screws. Now we can see the last thing left to do is just put our strip back on and press it down. And there we go. Our Cricut rollers are all replaced. I did find a pair of bent nose pliers useful, a small screwdriver. I did find the offset screwdriver useful as well, a small flathead screwdriver, and then what I did was I found a combination of a little ratchet and a screw head, really useful for getting inside. And that's pretty much it. All right guys, hopefully that was useful to you, and until next time, happy fixing. See ya.